If your customer is tackling a shock and strut replacement, we have tips that might just save them a headache later on. First off, make sure they're using the right parts. Just because something fits doesn't mean it's the right match for the vehicle. Using the wrong part can mess with the ride height, and that can throw off the electronic safety systems. It can also affect how the car handles and feels while driving. For the best fit, check out the catalog page at kyb.com or grab the KYB Parts Catalog app to keep everything handy while you work. Make sure the customer doesn't forget to loosen or remove all the necessary suspension components. It's important to check the auto repair manual to see what's exactly needed to take off for a proper install. Also remind them to never loosen the strut shaft nut without the right tools to support and compress the coil spring. Those springs are under a lot of pressure and can become dangerous if not handled correctly. Always recommend replacing the shock or strut mount and any worn parts. This helps avoid issues like wear and noise and reduces the chances of having to do it all over again. When your customer installs that new KYB mount, they won't need to grease the bearing plate. It comes pre-lubed from the factory. Make sure they're careful not to force the new unit into place, as that can stress other parts. And remind them not to try to lift the strut by tightening the mount nuts or bolts. That could damage the threads. Have them use the new hardware that comes with the unit. Each vehicle has its specific types of nuts and bolts, like flange bolts or nylon lock nuts. When your customer is ready to install, they should use a jack to raise the suspension components to the right height. They should start the strut mount nuts and bolts by hand and then snug them up with a ratchet or wrench. The customer should avoid using an air ratchet or impact wrench. Those could easily over-tighten things. The customer will want to make sure everything lines up correctly, especially the knuckle bracket with the lower mounting point. If the strut mounts have bearings, they can clock the strut to help with alignment. Once they have everything in place, they should lower the vehicle and use a torque wrench to tighten all nuts and bolts to the correct specifications. It's crucial to have the suspension loaded when doing this to avoid any noise or movement issues later on. It's fine if they can compress the shock or bare strut with their hands. It is designed to work with the weight of the vehicle. If your customer has a stem mount, they should be sure to assemble it in the right order. The shop manual will be a lifesaver for that. And when they're tightening everything, they should keep an eye on the rubber bushing. You want just a slight bulge, not a pancake effect. Some KYB shocks might look a little different because they use specially designed bushings to perform even better than the originals. Some strut shafts are shorter due to internal rebound springs, which can enhance handling during cornering. When installing, the customer should never grip the shaft with pliers or vice grips. It can damage it and lead to leaks. They should use the right tool to hold it steady instead. And when they're working on rear shocks, they should make sure that the axle is supported and at the right height. Overextending can cause serious damage, especially on older vehicles. After everything's tightened, the customer should take the car for a test drive. This helps the springs settle into their correct ride height and lets them check for any odd noises. Make sure they remember to retorque those bolts afterwards. Finally, it is a good idea to get a four-wheel alignment after installing new suspension components. Thanks for watching.